My name is Christina, and in this video we're going to talk about the 10 most common patterns of toxic thinking that keep people stuck at whatever level they happen to be at. Now, over the years, scientists, researchers, philosophers, and generally other really smart people have worked very hard to understand why human beings think the way that they do, why they perceive the way that they do, why and how human beings relate to each other, how they relate to the environment, why certain people seem to excel at just about anything that they do, while other people try and bash their head, try again, and kind of stay about where they're at. What they have found is that there are several patterns of thinking that are very efficient at keeping people right about where they're at. So, in this video, we're going to go over 10 of the most common patterns and what to do with them. Because we're going to go over a lot of information, and we're going to break this one down into a three-piece. In the first video, we're going to talk a bit about the brain, about how the thoughts get repetitive, how they keep us in loop, and why they're so good at keeping you right about where you're at. In the second video, we're going to talk about the first 5 of the patterns, of the negative toxic thinking patterns, but also how to deal with them and what to do about it. In the third video, we're going to talk about the second 5. So, without any further ado, buckle your seatbelt and let's let the mad science begin. The brain. The brain is comprised of billions of neurons that communicate with each other by sending electrical impulses to each other in specific paths, and that's what you perceive as a thought. The body. The body has 2 main communication systems. It has the nervous system and the endocrine system. Now, for the purposes of simplicity, we're going to say that the nervous system communicates from the brain by sending neurons up and down the spinal cord and additionally into the body. The endocrine system is a series of glands that is responsible for the hormone output into the body. Happy hormones, sad hormones, sexy hormones, circadian rhythm and blues hormones, name it. Now, the communication between these 2 systems is seamless. It's not even noticeable. But when you have a negative thought, that thought is registered in the mind the same way that an external stressor, an external thought, or an external stimulus is registered. Therefore, that thought is sent from the amygdala to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus notifies the pituitary gland through the nervous system, and various other hormones are put out into the body. The body then takes this information, registers it back up, and this is our basic stress response. Now, nothing has happened. We've just had a thought, but our body has already begun to respond as if there is a danger. Meet the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus essentially communicates between your brain, through the amygdala, to the rest of your body, through the nervous system and the endocrine system. Now, in addition to being kind of a translator between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, between your brain and your body, the hypothalamus actually has another job that has been essential to surviving as human beings. When the hypothalamus is notified of a stressor, of a stress, it shuts down the brain. The hypothalamus literally shuts down the cortex. Now, the reason it does this is because it's trying to help you out. Back in the savannah, when you see a tiger, you really don't have time to think if this tiger would like a cup of tea. You need to run. You need to run, Forrest, run. The hypothalamus knows this. So, kind of an easy way to think, a good analogy to think, is of a human being as a computer. The brain is the software. The brain has many thoughts and many pieces of information. New thoughts and programs can be learned. Old thoughts and programs can be deleted if they're not needed anymore. It is learning, changing, and updating. The brain can be the software. The body is the hardware of the computer. It has sets of feelings and instincts that are universal to us as human beings. Anger, fear, panic, but also happiness, love. This next part's going to be about where the science is going to get a little bit messy, so for the purposes of simplicity, we're going to do this one bullet point style. Emotions. are physical sensations in the body. Thoughts spark emotions. Emotions give meaning, value, and in many cases validity to thoughts. Now, we know that the brain talks to the body talks to the brain, and between the two of them you interpret the situation. Now, it's that interpretation that directs your behavior. We just talked about the brain, or the body in a human being as a computer. Think about the thoughts, the self-talk, as the search engine. Just like a search engine, it is designed to answer any question, any thought, exactly as it was put down. And how this relates to you as a human is that when you have a negative thought, that thought is sent through and your body has an emotion to correspond. That emotional information is sent back to the brain. The brain uses that emotional information to validate the thought, interprets that it is real, and comes up with another thought to cope with the original first thought that now has us in danger. In that way, the negative thinking, the toxic thinking, becomes self-perpetuated, and round the dark carousel goes. So, back up in the brain, we have the amygdala talking to the hypothalamus, telling it to play Survivor, the hormone edition. We have the hypothalamus talking to the cortex, guys, we got this. Take a break, you're not needed. And having it in whatever stage of functioning that about equates to the stress level. Enter the hippocampus. The hippocampus, in addition to other things, is largely responsible for your learning process. It does this by condensing short-term information into long-term memory, also retrieving memory and conveying it to the amygdala. In a sense, the hippocampus tries to be the voice of education. It conveys to the amygdala how this has happened before, what happened before, how did we deal with it before, and any kind of this happened and this was similar. Here's some information that we've learned that relates to this thought. Anything that will help kind of figure out what's going on, how you wish to respond, how you feel, and interpret the situation. The hippocampus comes in to help. In the case of a toxic thinker, oftentimes, this is not necessarily a good thing. For this to make sense, we're going to rewind a little bit. Now we know that the brain talks to the body talks to the brain. Between the two of them, they interpret the situation, they interpret the thought, and that directs the behavior. Now, take the behavior into the real world. The behavior will most likely produce a response that is about on par, about in keeping, or about makes sense, however you want to put that, with the thought. An example, if I go to a party and I meet somebody that I instantly think is going to be unkind, is going to be a jerk, I'm probably going to be more reserved. I might be a little snippish around that person, or just generally not interested in them. That person is going to read my behavior. They're probably going to think that I'm a bit of a jerk. They're probably going to think that I'm a bit standoffish and lose interest and walk away and go enjoy their lives. But that response, that they're not interested in me, that they're being kind of snippish and standoffish with me, is going to reinforce the belief that I was right. They're kind of a jerk. That person may not be. In fact, it is very likely that I would have gotten an entirely different response if I just showed up and said, "Hi, my name's Christina." I would have gotten an entirely different response, but I didn't. My behavior that was directed from my thoughts and my feelings produced a response that was in keeping with my thoughts and my feelings. Essentially, the behavior that, or essentially the response that I got back validated the thought. The hippocampus, in the case of the toxic thinker, has received these responses before, is telling the amygdala and telling the system, like, well, this is what's happened before, this is what we've perceived, and this is the evidence to support what you're thinking. It tries to be the voice of education, which it succeeds there. It tries to be the voice of reason. It doesn't quite succeed there. But the hippocampus, with its best intentions, can only relay back what it knows. And in the case of a toxic thinker, that's probably not what's going to get them out of the loop. To sum up, the first in our three-part series, we talked about how the mind talks to the body talks to the mind, and between the two of them you interpret the feeling, the thought, or the stimulus. That interpretation then directs the behavior. The behavior then in turn elicits a response that is usually pretty in line with what we were thinking or feeling to begin with. We talked about the different parts of the brain and how they work together to keep us functioning in this way, to keep us functioning as human beings. And while they are working for our best interests, while they are working as hard and as best as they possibly can, the brain can only work with what it's been told. It can only work with the software that it's been given, the lessons it's learned, and the information it has. Now, while this may sound really cold, it may sound really cold to say that if you don't have the life that you want, if you don't accomplish what you want, then it's because you're thinking about it wrong. But actually, if you think about it, that is really great news. That's actually not cold at all. That is really great news, and here's why. That means you can do something about it. That means it can be changed. That means it's in the software and it can be rewritten. Check out the next video. In the next video, we're going to talk about the first 5 of the 10 most common toxic patterns of thinking that many human beings go through, many human beings get stuck up in. We're going to not only talk about those patterns, but we're going to talk about how to break free, how to deal with them, and how to get out of it. So check out the video below. There's a link in the little bar down there, and I look forward to seeing you there. Stay kind, my friends. I'll see you in the video.